Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 937 of the Juicebox Podcast. Jason has type 1 diabetes. He's an adult. He's having great success on Control IQ, but he doesn't really completely understand why. We go over his settings, have conversations. He eventually sent me a note where don't forget to read his note into the end, and he switched to Omnipod 5 and has having a great time. Boom, boom, boom. What are we going to call this one? He's very amenable. Fastidious. Call it Fastidious. While you're wondering why I'm calling it that, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Save 35% off the most comfy sheets, towels, and sportswear, I guess, like joggers and stuff like that. Yeah, that I've ever worn. CozyEarth.com. Go there, load up your cart, put in the offer code Juicebox at checkout, and you'll save 35% off your entire order. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by two devices that my daughter's been using forever. The first one, the Dexcom CGM. Right now, Arden's wearing the Dexcom G7, but you can get the G6 too at my link, dexcom.com/juicebox. And Arden's used the Omnipod DASH right now, but this podcast episode, since it's sponsored by Omnipod, I'm going to tell you that you can get the Omnipod DASH or the Omnipod 5 at omnipod.com/juicebox. Use the devices that Arden's been using since she was a little tiny kid.
Hi, my name is Jason. I'm 46 years old, and I was diagnosed type 1 3 years ago.
3 years ago when you were 43? Wow.
Yes.
Any reason to think you would have diabetes, like a parent or someone else in your family has it?
I had a great uncle that had it, but other than that, no diabetes. I've got one of those, I guess it was unusual, but now it's sounding more normal, that it's the same kind of diagnosis that a lot of older people are getting. Mm-hmm. In April 2013, I was diagnosed as type 2. I had a A1C of 8.1, and I had all the normal symptoms. I was losing weight. I was thirsty. Was getting up to pee all the time at night, 4 or 5 times at night. And I went in and they said, "Oh, you're type 2."
And then they give you medication from there, or what did they do?
Yes, they started me on metformin. And then a month later, my A1C was down to 5.4. I had started exercising and eating better. And they took me off metformin. And then I think 3 months later, they put me back on metformin. And somewhere in that 6-year time span, they added insulin. I was taking Novolog. Mm-hmm. I was checking my blood sugar 4 times a day. And they got me a sliding scale that I still have a copy of. I kept, of how much insulin to give at meals. And then they put me on Invokana as well.
Jason, you were misdiagnosed as a type 2 for 6 years?
Mm-hmm. 6 years.
By a general practitioner?
I work for a city, and we have a city clinic. And I went in there, and they were the ones that tested me. And the doctor at the clinic actually said, "You have one of the antibody markers, but you don't have 2, so you're type 2.
Well, you work for a city. That's the first time anybody's ever said it that way to me before.
Yes, I work for a city. I'm a senior chemist at a wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, no kidding. Oh,
yeah.
Jason, you probably shouldn't have told me that. I have a lot of questions about water treatment.
And I got to hear you say water.
Yes, you did. And it's going to happen again. So I'll divert for just 1 second. The picture we all see online from New York City of a giant ball of fat in the sewer, is that real?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So do you put enzymes in the water to break up the fat, or how do you handle that?
Well, I don't do any of that. I work in the lab and they bring us samples and we test them and give them their data and then they go out and do whatever they do.
But do they do, like, how do you handle something like that? Like, what, I guess, let me re-ask the question then, based more on your perspective. What are you looking for and why are you looking for it?
Um, we're cleaning out the water that comes through the sewer so that we can clean it up enough to pump it back into a river.
Okay. And what are you taking out of it? Like what happens when the population uses it that it needs to be cleaned? I know medications. I remember reading a story about somewhere near Wisconsin or Chicago or something where there was so much metformin in the water, it was starting to impact wildlife. And that they said was because the population was using so much that it was passing through in their waste. Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah.
Wow. That's weird. It makes so much sense. And yet I don't think anyone would ever consider it. So you need to clean
There's
out.
also,
Go ahead.
they also can find COVID in wastewater and track it that way.
You can tell how much a virus is in a particular place. Is that, may I ask, Jason, does that come through the poo-poo or the pee-pee or both?
Both.
Both. Interesting. Oh my goodness. And then it's one of the marvelous things about this country, isn't it? The way we can provide clean drinking water and usable water for people. It's a marvel of like society, I think. And nobody thinks about it here, I wouldn't imagine, but this many people, this much, the volume of water that must get used. I think it's marvelous, like that it works that way. I imagine it doesn't feel magical to you anymore, but it does to
me. No, not so much.
You don't feel like you're involved in an amazing process. I do. Just so you know, Jason, between you and I think what you're doing and the people you do it with, it's pretty amazing. So anyway, all right. Well, so you've done this your whole life, or is this how do you apply a chemistry degree?
I've been doing it for 17 years.
Wow.
I originally got a degree in environmental science and just wanted to help the environment and stumbled on this job.
Nice. Well, I think it's definitely important work that I don't think anybody pays attention to. So yeah. I do. I'm constantly amazed by it, just so you know. And I'm very careful. Like if I fill up a container to give, my dog's water and there's a little bit left in it, I will go out of my way to put it in a plant or somewhere. Like I would never consider going back to the sink and just dumping it out again. I don't know. I don't know why it strikes me that way. I don't know what someone said to me when I was younger, but I don't know. I think it's amazing. All right, forget all that. They tell you you're type 2 for 6 years. You're living on metformin. Eventually, obviously, you're not type 2, so they have to start adding insulin. How do you, and then you have a doctor tell you you have a marker for type 1, but that still doesn't move it. So how do you end up figuring out you are?
I had gone into the city clinic. I can't remember now if I was sick or had an injury, but I went in and he's like, "Hey, we haven't done blood work in a while. Let's take some blood work and see how you're doing." And so when they took my blood work, I was 7.1.
Okay.
And I was still losing weight. I was down to 160 pounds, I think.
How much weight had you lost in total?
Over the 6 years, I'm 5'9". I think I went from around 200 to 160.
Do you think 160 is the correct weight for your frame, or were you too small?
Oh, my wife was telling me I was too skinny.
Okay. Well, she just might be a chubby chaser, Jason. I don't know. I'm talking about health-wise, not your wife's proclivities. You know what I'm saying? But you felt undersized. Okay. So so you're you're wasting away, but slowly, and you're using enough insulin, I guess, to, do you think it's LADA? Do you think it was a slow onset, or do you think you were like full on type 1 and you were just using enough insulin to help yourself?
I asked my CDE back in June, and she said, I don't really know, but it doesn't really matter. You're type 1 now, and you need insulin now. So
your CDE was deflecting, Jason.
Well, she didn't know all that whole backstory, so she wasn't involved in that.
It reminds me of when Cole was born, and he came out, and the doctor held him, and I was going to cut the umbilical cord, and there was a knot tied into the umbilical cord, like tight. And I pointed to the knot, and I said, "Is this a problem?" And he held Cole up an extra inch and went, "Apparently not." And then and I was like, that's not a real answer to my question. So anyway, okay. So once you figure out your type 1, how does management switch?
I started to go see an endo. I saw an endo in, I guess, November, and I walked out with a Libre. And I went back. Well, I mean, obviously they put me on long lasting and short acting and MDI.
Okay.
And they said, come back in January. I came back, and they're like, you should start thinking about getting a pump. Is that something you think you want to do? And I said, well, I've never really thought about it. And I said, sure, why not? Let's get a pump. And I started pumping in February of 2020.
Okay. So can you tell me a little bit from a psychological perspective, what was it like to go into that office thinking you had type 2 diabetes, and probably being like, the way people think about type 2 all the time is like, lose weight, it'll get better. And you've lost a significant amount of weight to the point where you think there's something wrong with that, and it hasn't made an impact on it. So you have this thing, you believe, you're doing the things they tell you, it's getting worse, not better. And then someone just does the presto changeo on you and tells you that, no, it's not this, it's that. Is that hard to swallow, or were you able to just roll with it?
Well, I mean, I had never looked into type 1. I didn't know a lot about it. I didn't know anything about it. It was kind of a shock. And what's funny is the doctor was like, oh, this is good news. You have the good diabetes now. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. I don't think any of them could be good.
Yeah, exactly. There's not a good version.
Yeah.
In both.
I told my dad that on the way home. I talked to him on the phone, and he's a doctor. He's like, no, that type 1 is not the good version.
Did your dad say you got the bad kind of a doctor?
I'm sure he was thinking that.
What kind of physician is your father?
He was an OB-GYN.
Oh, okay. No kidding.
Yeah, he was originally he was a naval doctor, and
then he moved down to the vagina. Thank you.
He was tired of seeing stinky men injured.
Jason, I got to tell you something. That we can stop now if you want. He moved from the navel to the vagina. I'm good. I don't think it's going to get better than that. You know what I mean, man? I was really proud of that, just so you're all aware.
That's funny.
Yeah. I'm sorry I cracked myself up. Okay. So you leave with a Libre, you go to MDI. I love how they ask you, do you think you want to pump, as if you have any idea what any of that means, or, like, why not? You know what I mean, man? Like, why wouldn't somebody say to you, hey, an insulin pump's an option. Here are some benefits of an insulin pump. What do you think about what I've just said? Instead of going, hey, do you want an insulin pump? I know you don't know what it is or what it does or any reason why you would want it, but it's now on you to decide. But you went with the idea, right?
What's that?
You did go with the idea. You decided to do it.
Yeah. I said, sure, let's try it out. I mean,
Jason, you're incredibly easy to get along with. Why is that? What part of the country are you from?
Texas.
Like northern, southern, east, west?
I grew up in South Texas, but now I'm in Dallas.
Okay. You're very amenable. through the story with not with me. You're very difficult with me, Jason. But no, I'm just kidding. You're very amenable, like in the conversation with the physician. And even earlier, before, when people aren't going to hear that we had some trouble technically getting set up, you were on the side of like contrition during the thing, even though you weren't doing anything wrong. So it's interesting. But so you start pumping. How long does it take for you, or did you ever get things under control?
The interesting thing was I was the first patient in the office to start Control IQ.
Really? How long ago?
2020, right before COVID. I snuck in an appointment before COVID started.
Look
So
at you.
it really hit.
And is Control IQ the thing that brought things around for you? Like, how were you doing prior to that?
You mean between my diagnosis and then?
Well, between the time somebody handed you needles and said you have type 1 and when you got a pump, how long was that time?
That was from, I'd say, November 1st to February 12th. I went from a 7.1 to a 6.
Just on MDI. And then you moved to a pump very soon after, a few months after.
Mm-hmm.
I gotcha. Okay. Did the pump then make I would imagine, another adjustment to your outcomes?
I stayed on January, I was 6. April, I was 6.3. And then in August, I was 4.8. I remember I was sitting on the field watching my kid practice soccer, and I was looking at Facebook, and I was in a diabetes group, and someone mentioned the Juicebox Podcast, and I was like, well, I'm almost done with the podcast I'm listening to. I don't have anything else to listen to. I'll give the Juicebox a try and see what that's about.
And now you realize you'll never get done with this because I make too much content. You won't be able to finish.
You keep me entertained at work.
I'm doing my best. Oh, am I helping to support the cleaning of water? This makes me feel very good.
Yeah, of course you are.
How do you listen? The liquid that you drink that comes out of the faucet, what do you call it?
Water.
Water. When I say it like that, am I saying what you're saying? Water? Does that sound like
so?
See, it's hard to tell, isn't it? So when I say I hear you say water. Are you hearing me say it correctly when I do that?
Say it again.
Water.
That's normal.
Okay. And when I say water, you hear like WTTER.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Hey, when you're watching your son play soccer, are you thinking, I wish this kid was playing football or baseball? Be honest with me, Jason.
No, I'm not. I don't want him to get a head injury, and I find baseball boring.
That soccer ball could hurt, though. You get that whooped in your head. It's not good. I'm telling you. Maybe field hockey. Well, that's for girls. Even that ball's hard. Badminton. Nobody's getting hurt in badminton, I bet.
Well, now he switched over to Taekwondo, so.
Oh, that's interesting. Good for him. All right. So you found the podcast. I mean, listen, I want to try to take, I'm going to take credit for your 4.8A1C if I can, but if I can't, like, how are you accomplishing that?
Before listening to your podcast, nobody had ever mentioned pre-bolusing.
That's
just check your blood sugar, give your insulin, and start eating.
What are you eating, Jason? What's your diet like?
I eat just a normal American diet, no restrictions.
Get out of here. And so you're using a fast-acting insulin in a pump. You have a CGM. You're using Control IQ, so you must have moved from Libre to Dexcom at some point. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So you have a Dexcom G6. You have Control IQ. You learned how to pre-bolus, and you have a sub-5 A1C. And describe to me what an American diet is to you. Like, what are a handful of things you've eaten this week?
Let's see. Well, last night was just grilled chicken, corn on the cob, and a salad. But the night before, I made pizza. Mm-hmm. We've had tacos this week, spaghetti, We do a lot of grilling and smoking because we're in Texas. That's what we do.
Of course.
But
So dry with your smoking, those aren't wet rubs in Texas. They're dry rubs, right?
Yeah, okay. Salt and pepper,
right?
Mainly.
But you're taking in carbs. Do you avoid processed foods completely?
I don't eat a whole lot of processed foods. I'll eat chips, but I say no restrictions. But I don't really have a sweet tooth. I don't eat like cookies or candy or cakes.
Okay.
But other than that, if something I want to eat, I'll eat it. Chinese food.
How many carbs do you think you take in a day?
It's hard to say because I kind of quit counting carbs. I kind of do like you. I just look at a plate and I'm like, well, that's probably much? 10 units of insulin.
Wow. Why are you so good at this? Maybe you do honestly, Jason, maybe you do have the good kind of diabetes. but no, but seriously, why do you think you're doing, I guess I should ask first, are you having a lot of lows?
No.
You don't have hours at a time where you're 65 and you don't do something about it? Nothing like that?
No. I actually looked at my clarity report before coming on here. The endo wants the range set at 70 to 180. So that's what I have the clarity set at. And I was 94% in range with like 2% low and 0.2% very low.
What was your percentage high? And high means over 180 in this scenario, but
let me see if I can pull that up.
Would you? Because I'm fascinated.
High is 2.7%. Very high is 0.2.
Holy hell. What? Huh.
My average glucose is 109. Coefficient 25.7. Standard deviation 28.
Yeah, your deviation's pretty good. And everything's good. All right. So, Jason, I mean, you're 3 years at this. Can you contextualize for me why you're having the outcomes you're having?
I think I just stay proactive on it. If I'm going to eat a high carb meal, I'll change my basal rate. I'll double it from 0.75 to 1.5, and I'll leave it there till it peaks and starts coming down. And I just make corrections if I get over. My alarm is set for 140, so if I hear it, I start looking and do I need to make an adjustment? Did I miss on my basal? Am I going to need more?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I just stay on top of it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You're ahead of it, and if it tries to get ahead of you, you jump on top of it, push it back again. That's it.
Yep. I learned that from you.
Oh, well, I'm glad about that. But, not everyone listens, Jason, which is why you're freaking me out a little bit. So, in a very good way, don't get me wrong. You're not Cowboys fans, are you?
Yes, we are.
I don't know how we can.
But we're more college fans.
Oh, perfect. Let's not mention the Cowboys.
Okay.
I've learned growing up in Philadelphia that Eagles fans believe that the Cowboys are their bitter rival, but the Cowboys don't feel that way about the Eagles. Is that true?
I think, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not the hugest Cowboy fan. I know we don't like the Eagles. We think, or people down here think the Eagles fans are awful.
I'm an Eagles fan, Jason. What do you think?
Well, I don't see you being awful.
Thank you. It's perfect. Although, let me tell you a story that might change your mind. Then we're going to go back to your management. I just got nervous because I forget what story I told to highlight. Anyway, I guess we'll all find out together in a second. But first, omnipod.com/juicebox. At my link, you can get the Omnipod DASH or the Omnipod 5. Now, all the Omnipods are tubeless. They're all delightful. They're all just that little thing you just put on, no tubing, nothing to be tethered to, no reason why you can't just jump like in the lake or in a pool or in your tub, right? You don't have to take it off first. Anyway, that's maybe just the tiniest little bit of why we love the Omnipod at our house. But here's the thing. There's 2 Omnipods. You can get the Dash if you just want to make all the decisions yourself, like put in your settings, then, you're like, well, I'm going to put in this many carbs and, my blood sugar is going up. I'll make an adjustment. It's going down. I'll make an adjustment. But if you get the Omnipod 5, when it's coupled with the Dexcom G6, you have an algorithm that's making insulin decisions for you. Yes, you still tell it, I'm going to have this many carbs. But then, man, it starts making decisions by itself. It's pretty amazing. Omnipod.com/juicebox. It's at least worth you checking out. Use the links, please. It helps support the podcast. You can type them in a browser or click on them in the show notes of your podcast player or at juiceboxpodcast.com. As long as you get to my link, you're supporting the show. Whether you're interested in Omnipod or ready to buy, omnipod.com/juicebox. Now, another link that please just treat exactly the same, dexcom.com/juicebox. Dexcom G6 and Dexcom G7, both available there. Arden's rocking the G7 right now. She loves it, but she wore the G6 for years, and it was fantastic. So whatever you're looking for, whether it's a G6 or the G7, head to dexcom.com/juicebox to check it out. You're going to be able to see your blood sugar in real time, its speed and direction. That's like, is it going up? Is it going down? Is it going up 3 points a minute, 2 points a minute? Is it 98? Next time it takes a reading, is it 110? Is it 70? It shows you right on your smartphone, Android or iPhone, or on the Dexcom receiver. I don't want to call it magical because I think I'm not allowed to, but it's amazing and I love it. And if you came to my house and tried to take it, I'd get a stick and beat you back out the door. Dexcom.com/juicebox. You can't have Arden's Dexcom. You can't have her Omnipod, but you can get your own. Use the links. Support the show. That was slick when I was like, you can't have hers. Like, I set that whole thing up. Like, you can't come to my house and take my daughter's stuff, but you could get it. Anyway, I was pretty impressed with myself as I do these things on the fly and don't pre-write them. Support the podcast, please, by supporting the sponsors. I'm not saying go buy a Dexcom if you don't want one, but if you're going to get one, please use my links. Thank you so much. Let's get back to Jason and whatever horrible story I'm about to tell. I grew up being taught to like yell and scream at sporting events, right? I'm not a big yeller and screamer anymore, and I can look back in hindsight and see that athletes are not people who you get to yell at just because they're, being paid to play a game in front of you. However, when I was much younger, I don't know exactly how young, my early 20s maybe, we were at a Phillies game, and a visiting team, I think it was the Cardinals, and I want to say that the guy was Lance Berkman, but hold on and let me check. Anyway, this guy was playing left field. Was it Lance Berkman? Yeah, I think it was. I apologize to Lance in advance if he ever hears this. I don't imagine he will. He had recently lost a lot of weight, and in honesty, looked terrific. He's coming out of left field. We're at the Phillies game, and so he's coming down the third base line. I'm sitting on the third base line, and sometimes at a sporting event, for reasons that you can't figure out, like just all the sound dies. Like nobody makes noise for a minute. So it's dead silent. And I yell, Lance. And he looks up and I said, you looked better fat. And he, I don't know why I said that. I was a young man, and he looked up. I feel bad telling this story, Jason. He looked up like, oh, look, somebody's calling my name. I will wave. And as he was getting ready to gesture, I said what I said, and his hands and his head just went forward, and he just slunk down into the dugout. And then an entire section of the stadium burst out into laughter as if the best thing that had ever happened just happened. And I, in the moment, was incredibly proud of myself. And now 30 years later, or however long ago it was now, actually, I might be dating myself. I have no idea when it was. It was the end of his career, I believe. I feel badly for doing that. So are Phillies and Eagles fans bad people? All I can tell you for sure is that 300 people thought that Lance Berkman story was hilarious. So maybe we are. I don't know. So anyway, Jason, here's what I'll tell you about Philly. If you're walking down the street in Philadelphia when I was growing up and you tripped and you fell, everyone would laugh at you. And then they would all make sure you were okay and help you up. That's how I think of Philadelphia. Like you're not going to get away with anything, but no one's going to leave you behind. So there's something about sarcasm and picking at people you love that seems intrinsic to this area. I don't know why that is. Anyway, Lance Berkman's a perfectly fine guy, and I'm sure I was happy for his health changes. I just thought of the first bizarre, hurtful thing that I could think of and blurted it out loud, and I couldn't begin to tell you why. Anyway, all right. What do you think, Jason? Am I a bad guy?
No.
Do you think Lance Berkman would like me?
I think if he heard the story, if he even remembered it, he might think it's funny now looking back, but I don't know.
Jason, I have to tell you, if he remembers that, it would be one of the proudest things I've ever accomplished. I would go places and tell people. Anyway, so you're using, it's such a strange term, but okay, so you're using insulin, you're on this Control IQ. Are you consistently under 5, or was that just a fluke?
Looking back, 5 is the highest I've ever been. In August, I was 5, but we went on 3 vacations this summer, and I had COVID like 2 weeks before that appointment. So,
Jason, this is a verified A1C from a lab, or this is like your app telling you this?
No, this is from the CDE. I've kept all those little stickers they print out when they do your A1C.
Wow. And for your money, this is about understanding the timing of insulin and staying ahead of a rise and nothing else.
Yeah.
Are you maniacal about it? Like you would never let a high blood sugar go?
I don't know if I'd say maniacal, but if it gets to 180, I'm pretty mad.
I wasn't proud of the word when I pulled it, Jason. Just so you know, I think my internal thesaurus let me down. I think I was going to say fastidious, and then I thought that's not a word people use.
Well, I just pictured someone staring at their app and just looking at it like with mean eyes, like, oh, I can't believe this. I'm going to do something about this right now.
Well, I think I meant half of that, but not the mean part. Just the just the intensity of not letting it go. Fastidious was the right word. I shouldn't have been embarrassed that I knew that word. I should have just went with it.
It's a good word.
Yeah. Okay. Weird spelling, by the way, but great word. Fastidious. Fastidious. It's a great word. Means showing or demanding excessive delicacy or care. I'm not embarrassed by but I dumbed myself down just then, Jason. I don't usually do that. Why did I do that? Is it because you're from Texas? I'll figure it out. I was like, I don't want to be using fancy words while we're talking about Texas and barbecue and yelling at Lance.
Hey,
Berkman.
we know fancy words too.
Hey, how bizarre is it that I'm the guy who yelled "You looked better fat" at Lance Berkman, but I knew and used fastidious in a sense. I'm a paradox, Jason. We're not gonna. People know what paradox is, right? I don't have to define that. We're good. So
I think we got that.
Yeah. So, what made you want to come on the podcast?
I guess just to share my story. I don't know. I think every podcast has got something valuable in it. And I thought maybe I could add something to it. My goal was to come on after I was diabetic for a year, but then I waited around, and then once you do schedule it, it's pushed out so far.
I'm amazed every day when there's somebody on the line when I push the button, Jason. I'm like, this person signed up to do this 6 months ago. I had a lady sign up the other day. It's September 2022 right now. And I got an email that said that this person just chose August 23rd, 2023 as their recording date.
Wow.
And
Almost a year.
yeah. And I was like, huh. And then I'll record with them and it'll take me 6 months to put it up.
Yep.
But I tell that story because it makes the advertisers very comfortable because they know there's content. So you were going to do it after a year, then you sat on the idea for a little bit, and then by the time you did it, it takes as long as it does to get on. Do you think you've learned anything in that time? Like, how much different are you as a person with diabetes right now than you would have been 2 years ago, for example?
I think I've gotten better at, figuring out doses for meals for sure. Like, you kind of eat the same things over and over again, and you can look at it and say, well, 6 units wasn't enough last time. Let's try 7.
Yeah.
Or 7 was too much last time. Let's try backing it down a little bit and see what happens.
Are you incredibly active?
No. I think my activity is probably yard work, and that's about it.
No kidding. Did you put much of that weight on after you were diagnosed correctly? Put it back?
I've come back to 180, and I'm just kind of hovering right at 180.
So you're probably at a very healthy weight right now for your size, in your mind. Yeah. Your wife happy again?
I could probably lose 5 or 10 pounds, but
okay. Is your wife happy again? I know she wants something to grab onto.
Yeah, she's happy.
Okay.
I guess. I mean, I'm still here.
Is that how you measure your marriage, whether or not she makes you leave? That's how I measure mine, Jason. That's why I was asking. Oh my God. I'm amused by the idea of your wife being like, why don't you put some weight back on? Get that thing shaking for me again. And I'm also amused by the idea of saying it to you because it seems so out of character for you that I feel like it makes you uncomfortable. I think my Lance Berkman thing's coming back, Jason. I'll have to stop that. So you're back at a good weight. There's nothing, Jason, I can't tell you, like, this is crazy. Like, you're not incredibly active. You're swagging your meals by going, I think it's about this much insulin. You are eating repetitively, so you're learning and getting better and better and better. I mean, you're past the age where I imagine you'd be having any weird hormonal shifts, so you're not seeing an impact there. You're not a woman. You're not having a menstrual cycle. Like, nothing like that's happening. It almost feels like this is as easy for you as someone could hope for.
Yeah, I feel bad for the kids who have it and who go through puberty and they're fighting all those changes. And, it seems like it's a lot rougher. And for me, it's just another thing you do during the day.
So, yeah, it's super interesting. And so, what about, like, I don't know, do you take any supplements? I'm trying to figure out something you might be doing that other people aren't doing that we wouldn't maybe initially attach to this.
No. I don't take any other medicine except insulin.
No kidding. I don't know what to say even. What's your like lineage? What's your background?
Western European mutt.
That's it. Got it.
English, Irish, Swedish.
English, Irish. So you even have a blend of European in you that leans towards people who I see. How about other autoimmune? Is there, do you have any other autoimmune issues? Do your kids, do your family members?
No. Not as far as I know. No one's ever said anything about thyroid or celiac or Hashimoto or
Jason, you're a unicorn.
Bipolar or anything.
You're a unicorn, Jason. Very interesting.
I don't know about that.
You don't know about that? How many, you have kids? How many kids?
I have one kid. He's 7. He'll be 8 in December.
Are you thinking of more, or is one where we're stopping?
1 and done.
I agree with this, by
Yeah.
the way, Jason. Yeah. I mean, you run the risk of him being like a snotty little brat when he's older, but you can knock that out of him in his early 20s, probably. But smart. Because also college, very expensive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, we went through a lot of IVF to get the one, and
Oh,
we
I see.
we tried a couple times after, and it just didn't never take. So
Interesting. So while you were, he's 7?
hmm
So you were trying to have a baby while you had diabetes.
yes.
Did you ever wonder if that was the cause? Like, were you ever concerned, and did you look into it from your perspective versus hers?
Oh no, it was all her.
Jason, that was very direct. You're like, no, I was everything sperm perfect. It was, and so, well, that's tough. So your wife went through a lot then to have your son.
Yes, it
Yeah,
was very emotional, very rough on us,
I
on her
imagine.
in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I imagine it's terrible. I'm sorry that she had to go through that. I'm glad it worked out for you, and I understand why you wouldn't be up for it again. So you're your own condom, basically, Jason. You don't even have to worry about it. You know it's going to happen, right? Like you'll be 52, and she'll come into the room and be like, I'm pregnant." You're going to be like, no. She'll think this.
That would be, well, that would be something else.
Yeah, you got to be careful, Jason. Are you being careful?
Uh,
That's a no. I'm going to take that as a no, Jason. Okay.
it's there's an issue with tubes and stuff, so it's not possible.
You really,
So,
okay. It can't happen. All right.
right.
All right. Listen, if it ever happens, please call me back. Please be like, so Scott, listen, we went to a wedding. Then after the wedding, we went home, acted like kids for a couple of hours. And I don't know. Because you ever heard of people, like, I know this is not the same thing, but people have had like their, I can't think of the name, a vasectomy. I almost said their
Yeah.
balls clipped, but a vasectomy. And then you'll hear about it like it going back or something. And then
I've heard those stories before. Yeah.
terrible stories, Jason. They're terrible, like a horror movie. Seriously. Wow. All right. Well, listen, is there anything you want to talk about that I don't know to bring up? Because I'm baffled by you. I'm not 100% sure where to go with this.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if we would go anywhere with it because I didn't know how this conversation was going to go.
You're flipping me out. So like, I mean, I guess tell me a little bit about, you know what? Let me dig for a second. So you're 108,
Okay.
you're 180 pounds. You're in your 40s. What's your basal set at?
Well, I just listened to your Omnipod series, and I heard that your basal should be 40 to 50%, and I'm using less basal than that, but I bumped it to 0.9.
Well, that's on Omnipod 5. Omnipod 5, when you're first setting it up, is desirous of your basal bolus being pretty balanced. It makes the learning process smoother. And to dig into that a little more, I think people often get to the right result the wrong way, meaning
Mm-hmm.
maybe their basal's very low and they're over bolusing food and corrections to stay above it, or their basal's too high and they're eating to feed the basal, like that kind of stuff. And so not that it's some sort of rule that it's 50-50, but for reasons that are explained in the Omnipod 5 episodes, which people should feel free to go try. When you're starting Omnipod 5, having your settings near 50-50 is advantageous. So, but where were you at? Tell me. I'm sorry, you were at
0.75 an hour.
and you moved it to 0.9.
Mm-hmm.
Did you then change your carb ratio or your correction factor or anything like that?
No, I didn't.
So you got stronger with your basal, but didn't change insulin to carb or your correction factor, and you're not getting low.
Correct.
You're just keeping. So where do you sit stable away from food and boluses?
Mm, 100, 110 usually.
Okay. And the point nine is the 100, 110. Where were you sitting prior to that? And were you seeing Control IQ? Was it consistently giving you insulin? And now you've made up
Um,
for that with the basal?
Control IQ generally has taken away my basal, even though I had it set at 0.75. A lot of times it would look like it was at point 0.3 an hour.
Then why did you move it to point nine?
I don't know. I listen to you.
You're just like, I'll slide the just you might be like just like dumb luck in this diabetes thing. Who knows? But
Well, I've gotten no advice from my CDE. They never look at my settings. They never tell me to adjust anything. They're just like, hey, you're doing great. Do you need any prescriptions? How's the family? What's going on in your life?
how's the family? I heard that kid stopped playing soccer. God bless. Soccer cannot be a sport people love in Texas. Am I right?
uh, there's a lot of soccer players. I mean, I played for 8 years
Did
when
you?
I was a kid.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, then I'm misinformed. I think of Texas as a place where everybody plays football in high school and everyone lives and dies with it. But that might be because I watched that TV show. Oh God. Now I'm realizing Friday Night Lights, which I did enjoy. I don't think I've ever seen the movie though. Nah, who cares? All right. All right. What's your correction, your insulin to carb ratio for meals?
Oh gosh, let me look. I don't even know. Um, let's see. My correction is 1 to 54. My carb ratio is 1 to 10.
1 to 10, 1 unit moves you 54 points, point 0.9 basal. Hold on a second. Do you find that to be right? Do you ever go out of automation and try your settings to see if they work?
No, I've never done that. No.
Interesting. But you notice that it's taking basal away most of the time?
Yeah.
Do you eat frequently throughout the day?
No, just 3 meals a day.
You're a 3 meal person. So
Hmm.
you bolus your meal, and is that when you see it take basal away, or is it taking basal away even overnight or?
Yeah, it'll take it away overnight. Uh,
Because the way Control IQ works, it is utilizing the basal rate that you put in there. So whatever you tell it, it's deciding, I'll take some of this away, I'll leave it where he put it, or I'll add to it.
mhm.
And you were at 0.7 and it's taking it away. You made it 0.9, it's still taking it away. Is there ever any time on your graph where you're actually using the 0.9?
Yeah, right now I am.
You are right now. Okay.
Hmm.
Because there's part of me that wonders if your basal, like I see you're trying to get lower like stability. Like did you consider making the correction factor stronger instead of the basal stronger? Have you ever tried that?
No, but now that you mention it, I probably will give that a shot.
Again, Jason, you're very amenable. And so let's tell people for real quickly, nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. I'm just talking out loud. So like did moving your basal up lower the place where you sit stable or no? It would, I don't think it did. That's what I'm asking.
No, it's still,
It's still the 100, 110.
yeah, pretty much.
So my thought is, because you're not spiking at meals, right?
I mean, everybody goes up. I go up. I mean, sometimes, let's see, lunch yesterday, I hit 182.
Okay. For how long until you were back down again? And did you have to correct it yourself?
Yeah, I did add some corrections. I think that was fat and protein though, because the rise came
Later.
a good while later.
All right. We don't want to count that. And I know everybody's blood sugar goes up when they eat, but for the most part, it sounds like you're more of a 140 person.
Hmm.
Okay. Which I'm comfortable with. Not that you care what I think, but so, yeah, I don't know if I don't put the basal back to where it was and try making your sensitivity. Would you say it was 1 to 54?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like move it to like, I don't know. Where would you move it to?
I don't
52?
know. I've never moved it before.
Yeah, I might just move it a couple points and see what happens. Like make it 52 and
Okay.
see if that starts bringing down that stability. And if it does, then keep nudging it one at a time until you get to where you want to be, and pay attention to what the algorithm's doing with the basal. Like in a perfect scenario, that you have chosen a basal amount that the algorithm does not need to frequently take away from or add to.
Okay.
That would be an indication that it's well set. And then you're giving the algorithm the ability to be more aggressive by making the sensitivity stronger. And the lower the number, the stronger the number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then, I'd make very small adjustments to that to see what happens. And then and then see if that doesn't also impact your meals. And then that's amazing though, Jason, like you can't really over basal though, because you have an algorithm.
All right.
So where are you? How are you fixing? I think you need less insulin than you think you do. What's your total daily insulin? Can you pull that up? I'm going to get a calculator while you do that. By get a calculator, I mean I'm going to open up an app on my computer that's a calculator.
Let's see. Where is that?
The lady that left the review the other day that said my interviews don't have enough diabetes in it, she's going to love this. And also, this is for her. Jason, cover your ears. There. Okay. Now, he just talked to her about being a stripper. It was interesting. Okay. Jason cleans, wait, hold on. Water. Jason cleans water, which is, I can't say it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. All right, go ahead. Get your total daily insulin. Making some notes here.
Where was that average one? That's what I wanted to look at. It's usually about 30, 35 a day.
30 to 35.
On a 30-day average, 35.61 units a day.
All right, so we're going to go with 35. And then tell me this. You eat about 3 meals a day. What's your total bolus a day, meal bolus? Average. Does it show you that? It should, right?
23.
All right. So then, Jason, we have, as OJ said when he was running up the highway, a problem. Because think about this, okay? If your total daily insulin is 35 and your average meal insulin is 23, that means 35 minus 23 is 12. Okay. And if you divide that by 24, that means your basal would be about 0.5 an hour. And you were at 0.7 and it was taking it away. So I would write all my settings down, first of all, Jason, because I don't want to mess you up. Right. But I would wonder if you made your basal, first of all, 0.5 an hour. I don't expect you would notice any difference in your care at all. You're just none. And then from there, how much of the rest of the insulin, so your meal insulin's about 23. What about correction insulin? Can you see your corrections?
I just exited that screen. Correction would.
Good.
Where did it go? It says 0.15. I guess that's the correction bolus that Control IQ is giving me.
Well, then let's think of it this way. How frequently do you go into the pump and add insulin?
Once a day, maybe
Okay.
twice.
To the tune of a couple of units? Not even?
Might be 0.5 or 1.
Okay. So not a lot of corrections going on. Yeah, I think I would probably make your basal 0.5 an hour and then watch it for 6 hours. I'm assuming you're not going to see anything change because the algorithm's been taking your basal away to begin with. And then I would probably give you a little more insulin sensitivity power and see if that doesn't make your stability lower. That would be kind of my first step there. And not by a lot, like not 54 to, 44, nothing like that. I might go 54 to 52, watch it for a few hours, see what happens. If you notice a little bit of a decrease, then I'd ride it for a little bit to see if it's, consistent. And then if it is, make a decision if it, 51 would be better. But you think 1 unit moves you 54? Does 1 unit move you? Does 1 unit move you 54?
I don't know.
Yeah, you're always in automation, right? So you're not sure.
Yeah. As we're talking through all this and working through all this, I should tell you that Tuesday I just got approved for Omnipod 5.
Well, that's good because if you're going to try it, you're very consistent with the 35 units a day as your total daily insulin. Omnipod 5 cares a lot about total daily insulin. And so if you do 35, I'm just going to split it in half, 17 and a half divided by 24. That'll put your basal at 0.7. So if you do start Omnipod 5, I would first of all figure out what your insulin sensitivity is right now. You can get that straight. But if your total daily insulin's about 35, when you set up Omnipod 5, I would tell it that your basal's 0.7 an hour.
Okay.
And that'll be at 50-50. That gives it the best chance to do its thing. But I think there's no harm in figuring out this other stuff for you, because I think that it's possible that once you go down to maybe around 0.5 an hour for basal and get your insulin sensitivity straight, you'd probably be able to shut off Control IQ and sit in manual mode and be pretty stable. And then the only thing left to do, if that's the case, would be to look at your insulin to carb ratio and see if there's any space in that at all, one way or the other. Because you want to spike as little as possible without ever experiencing a low later. So, like we just changed Arden's insulin to carb ratio last night from it's gotten weaker since she's gone off the birth control pills, which I haven't talked about on the show yet. But I think we took it from 5.5 to 5.3 last night. Moved it very, very, just a little bit, because I was noticing the algorithm. She's looping at this point, and I was noticing the algorithm working too hard after her meals. So I was like, let me get some of the insulin out of the hands of the algorithm and into the carb ratio. Yeah, I would do that. I would try it. Then I would try it in manual and see if you stay stable, and that's it. But then, and the other thing is, I'd write all this down, because if it gets wonky, you can always just put your settings back and say, oh, the thing the guy said didn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that all make sense, or have I been unclear about anything?
No, it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
Cool.
I mean, I've just never had anyone really talk to me about it and walk me through it.
Well, I think it's interesting to do, and I think it's necessary, especially moving forward, where more and more people are going to use Control IQ and Omnipod 5 and whatever Medtronic puts out next. People are going to be using them, and it's not a fear of mine, but it's a concern of mine that we're going to get farther and farther away from people who actually understand their insulin, and they're leaning on the algorithm so hard that they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, like, you're such an interesting story because you have an A1C around 5, and other than the things you do, which are amazing, you know, pre-bolus, stay on top of high blood sugars, which is a lot of it, you don't really know why you're having the success you're having. The algorithm's doing it for you.
Yeah, the algorithm's doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I don't, why are you switching pumps if you're having such good success with Control IQ?
I was just, because the Omnipod 5 learns and Control IQ doesn't learn. And honestly, when I reached out to Omnipod, I was just trying to see if I was eligible for it.
Mm-hmm. And
I never talked to anybody. I finally got a phone call on Tuesday. They're like, "Hey, we got it together. We're ready to ship it to you." And I'm like, "What?"
That fast, huh?
Yeah. I always thought that from what I've heard, you have to be on a pump for 4 years, but I haven't been on a pump for 4 years, until the warranty ends up expiring.
I believe if you listen to my ads for Omnipod 5, you will hear me say something like, hold on, let me pull up my ad reads. Omnipod 5. Yes, I read a line that says this. I'm sorry for all of you who, sometimes I make it up, but Omnipod 5 is also available through the pharmacy, which means you can get started without the 4-year durable medical equipment contract that comes with most insulin pumps, even if you're currently in warranty with another system. So that's something I say during the ad. So that's why you were able to switch, is my guess. Hey, for legal reasons, just to cover my butt here, Jason, can you just let me say something real quick?
Sure.
For full safety and risk information, a list of compatible phones, as well as clinical trial claims, data on Omnipod 5, you can go to omnipod.com/juicebox. Even though this isn't an ad, I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing wrong by anybody. So there's my there's my legalese. Okay. So how are we going to figure out? You got to email me in a couple days and tell me if this worked, and I'll add like a little I'll add your email to the end of the episode.
Okay.
Would you do that?
So as soon as when I get it and I've used it for a little while, and let you know how it's going?
Well, no, I was thinking about the changes to the Control IQ. I'd love to just know how that goes.
Yeah. I can email you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would really appreciate that, just because I'd love to either, I'd love for there to be a gap here and some music play, and then people hear me go, all right, Jason wrote in. He's like, hey, your settings messed me up completely. Or, like this worked or that didn't, or I ended up doing this or that. Like, I'd love to hear the end of it. So, and your episode's not going to go up for a while. So if you have an answer in a few days to a week or so, I'd love to know what it is.
Sure. I'll do that for sure.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, man. No, I can't really think of anything. I think we've covered it.
Thank you.
I think
we've
done a good job here.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing. And I mean, it's funny because I think that people could listen to this and think Jason's just like lucking into this. It just works. But what I hear is algorithms are really valuable, and so much so that you're living a fairly unencumbered life with an amazing A1C. Like, to me, you're the holy grail of this conversation. Like, this is because what I think is, if you weren't great about pre-bolusing, obviously your A1C would be higher. You'd have more spikes, they'd last longer, etc. But I mean, how much worse could it get? You're at a 5 A1C or lower. You could, I don't know, there are going to be people who don't know how to do any of this who still might end up with 6s, mid 6s or 7 A1Cs for somebody who previously could have very well been in the 9s or the 10s. It's an astonishing improvement for someone's health. And I think you're proving it out by your story, that they can be valuable for anybody. And if you're willing to put in extra work like you're doing, which, by the way, I mean, it's not that much extra work, I don't imagine, right? Pre-bolusing, etc.
No. I mean, you just glance down at your screen, look, and take 30 seconds to think about something, if even that.
Jason, you've got the attitude that I think would make Jenny very happy, and you're making me happy.
Good.
Yeah, seriously, because, it's so easy to hear. I heard somebody talking about the other day, like, I have trouble, this person said, I have trouble hearing the beeping and willing myself to do something about it. And you don't, that's not you at all, is it?
No, you've got to be willing to do something about it. I mean, if it's beeping for a reason. Either you can't ignore it. You have to fix it.
Yeah. What is it about your personality, do you think, that leads you to that?
I guess that's just how I'm wired.
Yeah. There's no answer to these questions. They're fascinating to hear spoken out and talked through. But because I agree with you. I hear the beeping and I think, we'll do something now and then we won't have to worry about it later. But a lot of people hear it and go, oh, I'll get to it. And then their blood sugar goes 130, 140, 150, 180. And they're like, oh, I can't believe this. My blood sugar's a mess. And they make a big bolus. They get low later. Then they're upset about that. And all I can think is, you could have just done something 3 hours ago that would have required such a small amount of insulin that there's no way you would have gotten low afterwards, and you wouldn't have this higher blood sugar. And that just makes sense to me. And I understand it doesn't make sense to everybody, or that everybody is not wired the same way. But I do like them hearing that if they were more, I don't want to say proactive, although I guess that's
I
right.
was going to say proactive.
Yeah.
That was the word in my head.
Yeah. But it's it, right? If you're more proactive, it takes less time and comes with less hassle than putting it off and then having to deal with it later. And I guess if that means
it's easier to fix a 140 than it is to fix a 180 or a 200.
Jason, you really believe in the stuff I say on this podcast, and it's working for you.
I do.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's validating for me. So thank you.
I will say though that if you're at Disneyland or Disney World chasing around a 7-year-old, you probably don't need a pre-bolus.
Right. So that's a good point.
Carry a bag of Skittles.
Are your variables very similar every day?
Yeah, usually.
Okay. So when you, so interesting. So you go over to Disney, your blood sugar start to fall?
Yeah, we walked 12 miles in that one day. We were there from when the gates opened, and we left at like 10:30 at night.
How did you handle it with your blood sugars? Were you just kind of offsetting with candy?
Skittles. 1 Skittle equals 1 carb. So,
were you on Control IQ? Did you consider going to exercise mode?
That thought didn't cross my mind.
Jason, if I'm not with you, you're lost. I'm gonna have to come down there, get in your pocket. We're gonna talk some more. I would be interested. Like, not interested enough for you to spend countless thousands of dollars to go back to Disney again. But if you're in a situation like that again, I'd be super interested if exercise mode would have helped you.
Oh, we went skiing a couple years ago, and I did use exercise mode for that, and that worked out pretty well.
Interesting. That's great. Well, listen, man, you're doing terrific. Nobody needs to tell you anything. So, but if you do, and please don't feel any pressure, but if you do make little bump around changes, I'd love to hear how they went.
I will. I promise.
I appreciate that. Hey, keep cleaning the water.
I will.
Such a big deal. Jason, the hallmark of a great society is functioning sewer and the delivery of clean water. It's the basis of everything. It really is.
Well, I'll tell you something that you've probably never thought of, and your listeners probably have never thought of. If you live on a river, trace that river up to another town and think, those people have already drank this water and pissed it out, and now we're drinking it.
I remember the first time my kids said something about that the toilet goes somewhere different than the sink. And I said, no, it doesn't. I said, there's one pipe in the bathroom, in the basement. It all goes down into that pipe. And they were just like frozen. They're like, what? I mean, seriously, like what an accomplishment to take wastewater and turn it into drinkable water. It's a massive accomplishment of humanity. It really is. What's the is there a river somewhere in China? Hold on a second. Where they make blue jeans nearby and the river runs blue. Have you ever seen that? Let me see if I'm making that up or not.
I've not heard that. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm not up on my Chinese news.
Why, Jason? Are you busy with that, having a kid and everything? And
Yeah.
so these stories are mostly from like 10 years ago. So, but yeah, I guess you can, like, from space, taking a photo, you can actually see the darkness, the blue that comes down this river into a body of water. Is that an actuary when that happens? Look at me.
Estuary?
Estuary. Very good, Jason. You were paying attention in college.
Sometimes.
Wait, I was saying an actuary is somebody who like deals with like managing risk and uncertainty. And listen, nobody listening knew but you. Estuary, the tidal mouth of a large river where the tide meets the stream. All right. Well, everybody can go look that up on their own, Jason. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it.
It's my pleasure. It really was. I want to thank Jason for coming on and sharing his story. And I want to thank Omnipod and Dexcom for sponsoring the episode. Dexcom.com/juicebox and Omnipod.com/juicebox. Go get yourself a Dexcom G7, a Dexcom G6, an Omnipod 5, or an Omnipod DASH. Get your gear. You know what I say? Glow up. Is that what the kids call it? Glow up your gear game. Dexcom and Omnipod. Thank you so much for listening. If you hang on for a minute, I'm going to read Jason's email for you. Don't forget to check out the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. And don't judge all Philly fans by me. All right, talk about transparency and honesty. Let me read you Jason's email. There's two emails, actually. The first one said, "Hey, Scott, I tried making the adjustments to my T-Slim that you suggested, but they didn't really work out for me. The new basal rates wouldn't hold me steady, and I would just continue to creep up. But thank you for the suggestions. I started the Omnipod 5 last Thursday. So far, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. Omnipod trainer. They changed his basal rates, blah, blah, blah. And here's the follow-up. This is... This is a few months after that email I just read you. Sorry, while I was counting months in my head. Jason says again, "Hey, Scott, Friday I went to the endo to get my first A1C since being on Omnipod 5, and it was 5.2 with a standard deviation of 27 and 93% in range. I mean, let's go. Up from 5 on the T-Slim, but the time period was over Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays and a week-long trip, so I'm not disappointed. We made a few adjustments this past weekend. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. The lack of tubing, not having to take it off for showering, and not having to change it. Thank you for everything you do." All right. That's it. I'm done. I have to be honest with you. I am tired and I got to stop. So I hope you're enjoying the podcast. It's late at night here where I'm doing these ads and the bumpers and everything. And Scotty got to sleep. I'll talk to you tomorrow.